Hey there, where you going? No, man, you got the right classroom. Come on in, take a seat beside me, my friend. Hey, look, here come T.A. Charlie. Let's see what he got to say.
Welcome to the Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for the Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it. You can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. That's it. After, well, maybe YouTube after Joe's comment. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Just look for the Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page. That's roadtoconcord.com. That's where you find all your show notes, handouts, and all that for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, you can email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email the professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow right now, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener sponsored, but if you are interested in advertising your business on the show, email us and we'll talk about it. Now, with that said, we do ask for your participation on a value for value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who do support this show. And
Natasha, where's the speed up button?
Donated.
Oh, they were sour cream cake covered in lemon glaze. Oh, there were two of them. Oh, they were so good. Donuts. And fully caffeinated, too. Natasha, you're going to have to find that speed up button. So make sure I talk real fast. Sometimes he's too slow. Yeah. I was singing a song on YouTube, and YouTube didn't like it. It's just, bomb, 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 bomb. I ran. Oops. I'm not supposed to sing that song. Strike two.
If we survive YouTube today, it'll be a miracle.
Facebook too. Okay, folks, before we get going, yes, I'm going to talk about what Trump, not President Trump, because he's not president. He gave that to the judges. We're going to address that in just a second. But we're going to talk about King Trump bombing Iran here in a minute. But first, did y'all hear? You know that guy who, that illegal who was trafficking and beating up his wife and, pedophile and all this other stuff, sex trafficking. And, the guy that they sent back to El Salvador or wherever it was. And Trump said, no, we're not going to bring him back, even though the judge said you got to bring him back. Well, Trump brought him back. And now the judge is going to kick him out without bail. Just said, hey, there's no reason to hold him without bail. We're just going to let that guy go. This is why I tell you Trump is not president. He has ceded the presidency to a bunch of unelected oligarchs in black robes who are now running the country for us because Trump, not President Trump, Trump is doing whatever the heck they say, even though it's illegal. They had a judge that said, hey, you're no longer commander in chief. You can't control the National Guard. Well, Joe, that's true because the National Guard belonged to the governors. Wrong, Skippy. Wish you understood how the military worked. The United States Military Reserve, of which the National Guard is technically a part of, belong to the United States military. They are not the militia. The militia is the whole body of all able-bodied, military-aged men. So if the governors of the states want their own little military forces to control, they need to reinstitute the militias. Welcome to the slippery slope. Before the end of the day, you're going to find out just how far down the slide you have gone. But Trump has full authority over the National Guard. Well established. Doesn't need any more precedent for this. But the judge said no. And it was such a glaring and egregious breach of that judge's authority that no less than the Ninth Circuit Court said, well, no, technically Trump has control of the national. When that bunch of loony lefties tells you you've gone too far, you have probably fallen off the edge of the flat earth. Oh, did I just say the earth is flat? You know it can't be flat. We have scientific proof that the earth is not flat. How do I know? Because if it was, you and I wouldn't be here. The cats of this world would have pushed all of us off the edge of the earth by now. And everything else as well. You know how that works. So the judges are still running around doing all sorts of things that are absolutely unconstitutional, things that they have no jurisdiction to be doing. And Trump is saying, hey, knock yourselves out. It's called sedition. It's treason in this case. And it meets, we've read this before. We did this on the show before. We have read the law and we have used form and function. And by God, they are breaking the law and nobody will put them in little silver bracelets. So Trump is not president, not in my mind, because he doesn't fit form and function. He's a figurehead every bit as much as Biden was. I'd like to know who's running the country. That's going to take us now to all of the acts of sedition that are going on in our government right now. All these elected officials that are running around saying, just stop ICE, get in the way of ICE, object, fight against ICE, riot against ICE. We got to protect the illegal aliens. Folks, we read the law. Sedition is defined as anybody who gets in the way of a duly elected government official doing their lawful duty. So when ICE shows up to arrest illegal aliens, not undocumented immigrants, folks, the word that you use does not change the form and function. That's a progressive ideology. Take that irrational stuff somewhere else. It doesn't belong on this show. We use logic and reason here. So if you are a little snowflake, you're not going to do well with me here today. I'm a little wound up and I'm a little ticked. So when you advocate the obstruction of officials doing their lawful duty, that's the definition of sedition. January 6th was not sedition. That was not an insurrection. What you do have right now, Bernie Sanders and Ilhan Omar and a whole bunch of these other people running around, that should get them arrested. Now, why aren't they at least kicked out of Congress? Well, you can't do that. Yes, you can. Have you read the rules governing Congress? The Constitution says Congress can kick members out of the House and the Senate. You have a majority Republican. Well, Joe, if you set the precedent, then everybody will do that. Well, then maybe people will behave a little bit better, then won't they? Or you'll be more responsible about who you elect. But you should at very least kick these people out of the governing body. But they should, by rights, be arrested, charged, and prosecuted accordingly. But we're not seeing any of that. We've even got people running around with the decapitated head of the president advocating to 8647. That's against the law. Now, in my state, we had one of these anonymous little snowflake patsies with all the different pronouns was threatening a local sheriff down here, somewhere around Disney, I think it was. It made the news if you were paying attention. And he was from out of state. So they sent him you won an all expense paid trip to Disney. And when homeboy showed up, they arrested his happy butt. And the sheriff got right in his face and said, here's the guy. You threatened to kill me. Challenge accepted. Come on, let's go. And he said, unfortunately for you, in the state of Florida, threatening to kill an elected official is a felony. So homeboy came back to go see the happy mouse, big fat little boy, and got arrested. Nice little sting thing. So now he's going to face actual justice. Things that we should be doing in this country. If you really want to find somebody who's doing things the way the law says he should be doing them, now I don't know if it's an act or not. It might be, probably is, because he's got an R after his name. But Governor DeSantis, baby, he's a political rock star right now, more so than Trump ever was or ever should have been, because DeSantis is doing the same things, but he's doing them legally. He's even doing things that Trump won't do. Notice, I'm not going to call him President Trump anymore. He gave that to the oligarchs in black robes. So I want to know why these people are not in jail. Also, why the heck are we treating the illegal alien groups as a police and criminal matter? It isn't. We now know as a fact, it's been proven, or at least if we can believe anything we're reading in the media anymore, that these people, for the most part, are organized and funded by folks that are connected to China and Iran and other foreign agencies, foreign states, which makes them proxies of a war on the United States. They're enemy agents. So that when, undocumented or whatever, illegal enemy agents or whatever, foreign agents, and when Trump enacted that law, and the court said, well, no, you can't do that. Oh, yes, he can. form and function defined, should have immediately arrested the judges and said, I'm sorry, but you are now giving aid and comfort to the enemy. That's called treason by the Constitution. It's not my fault that you got through Yale and Harvard Law School and never once had to read the Constitution, let alone study it. You just study stare decisis and case law. Well, that ain't going to help you because that's not how you're supposed to study the Constitution. So, in jail you go. Well, I'm a judge. You can't do that. You got to impeach me. No, it doesn't say that. It says I can remove you for bad behavior. Treason is bad behavior. Out you go. Well, we won't do any of that. Why? Well, because that's not America. That's not the way we're supposed to do things. Are we a country of laws? Well, we're supposed to be a country of laws. Well, then why don't you execute the law? Well, that's not the way we do things. Why? Are you a country of laws? Well, yeah. Well, now we're caught in that life loop. What's life? A box of cereal. How much does it cost? 69 cents. Where can I get it? You can't. Oh, well, that's life. What's life? Box of cereal. And we go round and round again. Don't you feel like you've been caught in this little matrix loop for a little too long now? When are we going to all spit ourselves out of this? This brings me to, yes, I'm hyped today. I know it. Fully caffeinated, fully sugar-dated, donated, and ticked to begin with. So, President Trump has attacked Iran. Before we even get into the wisdom of this, let me tick MAGA off right here and now, man. Y'all are going to all leave. Just watch the numbers, Charlie. They're all about to go. We ain't got many people watching us today as it is, but it's about to go to 2. It's going to be, 3. You, me, and Natasha. President Trump violated the Constitution when he attacked Iran. No, he didn't, Joe. The War Powers Act. Reagan did it. And yeah, guess what, folks? When you bomb another country, that is called an act of war. You have to declare war to do that legally in the United States. Constitution says Congress has to declare war before you conduct an act of war. You can pass a law called the War Powers Act. Says, well, President Trump, you can conduct a war for 90 days without congressional approval. Guess what that makes that law? Since it's a law and not an amendment, it's an unconstitutional law. Well, Joe, the judges have said, exactly. The kings in black robes, the presidents in black robes have said, yeah, I can do whatever I want. I'm a king, self-appointed dictator. I'm an oligarch. I've got all the power now. Well, that doesn't make it legal under the Constitution. It just means you've allowed lawless people into your courtroom, which, by the way, is exactly why the Northern Kingdom gets destroyed. But, that's for a Wednesday show. So what you have is lawless judges saying, well, yeah, the War Powers Act is constitutional when it clearly isn't. So now you got all these presidents running around conducting acts of war without a congressional act of war. If after Pearl Harbor, lefty Franklin Delano Roosevelt would not do anything to the Japanese without a declaration of war, why do we not want to declare war today? Welcome to the slippery slope, boys and girls. The fallacy that just not always is a fallacy. We'll get to that in a second. We have a precedent for what's going on in this country. It's called Andrew Jackson, Manifest Destiny. We also have Teddy Roosevelt. Both of them were... Okay, hold on. We got a full stop. Got to chase a rabbit. Natasha, off with his head. How dare he say no more sugar for me? Off with his head. Bring me the head of that listener right there.
No.
She's trying to protect me. Okay, Manifest Destiny and the search quest for empire. Well, where do I see that in? Trump's not questing empire. Well, he wants to annex Canada as the 51st state. Well, that's just a joke. Really? He said it wasn't. Well, he's going to take over Iceland. That's not a quest for empire. And he's going to invade Panama to get the Panama Canal back. That's not a quest for empire. Form and function. Quest for empire. That's going to be Andrew Jackson and Teddy Roosevelt. Folks, Trump never told you he was an isolationist. And Trump never told MAGA that he's a conservative or a constitutionalist. Well, at least he prayed to God the other day, Joe. Oh, yeah? Really? Which God? Well, the only God, Joe. Yeah, exactly. Which God? The God of money? The God of war? Because, I mean, he's all about the money. And he's now God of war. He's bombing people left and right here. praising himself for doing it. Folks, that's Baal. What? Yeah, that's Baal, god of war, god of material gain, money. That's Baal. That's that bull on Wall Street. Which god? There's a reason you name those gods by names, because there is more than one. Aaron's late to the game. Bring him up to speed, Natasha. Folks, it's funny. Listener Aaron Spikes just joins the class. First thing he asks is Joe been on donuts this morning? So the rest of the class, who was here on time, Aaron, all answers you, duh! But it's amazing that he just comes in lately and he already knows. Okay, slippery slope. This is when the fallacy of when you say, well, if you do A, it'll cause B, which will lead to C, and then eventually you'll get D. And you're saying, well, there's no causality there. That's called the slippery slope. Well, I tell you, if you start passing laws that are unconstitutional, declaring them lawful, the next thing you know, you got somebody who doesn't obey the Constitution at all, and the Constitution is no longer the governing document of the country. You do whatever you want, and it's just paid lip service as a means of getting yourself elected. We'll say, Joe, that's a fallacy, except when it isn't. When you throw human nature and history into the mix, you might find out that this slippery slope thing actually sometimes is real. Like, if I start having rock and roll with all the little salacious hip movements and the scantily clad dressed women on stage showing their midriff and the mini skirts hiked up to here, eventually it's going to lead to sexual immorality, which is going to lead to people wanting divorces and abortions. And well, back in the 60s, that was called the slippery slope, said it wasn't going to happen. Guess what it's done? Woohoo! Slippery slope is a very dangerous thing because it's not always fallacious. Not if you're guided by human nature and history. Well, where we're at right now with the president using the military to bomb a nation without an act of war, you are so far down the slippery slope, you've gone over the double hump of the metal slide where your buddies have thrown the sand on the slide at the very foot of it. You're about to go sliding on your butt onto the hard ground that's always underneath that slide where the puddle is. And, you know, you always threw the sand up there to make you go a little faster just at the end and also help tear up your backside with the sandpaper on that hot piece of metal. Just, oh, wait a minute. You youngins don't understand those slides, do you? Well, those of us my age understanding just how dangerous it was on the typical playground in school in our day. Our playgrounds were designed to kill us, which is why Generation X is practically indestructible. So we're at the bottom of that slide, and it's nothing good from that point on. So now we're going to get to Iran. Iran's got a nuke. Well, we're going to stop them from getting nukes. We've already got a comment on this show. It was there before the show even started today. Comment says, honestly, all our wars for at least 40 years in the Middle East have been horrible, evil agenda built on lies. How anybody be fooled with these excuses of Iran nukes must have limited mental clarity or zero moral judgment. Okay, we'll come back to that. All countries deserve their own nukes. It is their right of self-determination. Anybody left without nukes will be bullied. North Korea is doing fine, and Pakistan has stated they would give a nuke to Iran. Iran will have nukes. This is not about safety. This is about the conquest of the world by the super elite money printers. Keeping nukes away from countries is like prohibition, proven not to work. People will drink alcohol, and they did. Boy, you talk about false analogy. Okay. In theory, that comment is true. In theory. But we're dealing with nuclear weapons, and we're dealing with people who are not necessarily the most sane individuals in the world, or at least sane by our measure in the Western world. They're perfectly sane in their measure. Here's where I'm going to get serious about this. If you're going to have nuclear weapons, it requires your nation and its people to be of a certain mentality, a certain mindset with certain principles. They need to be responsible with those weapons. North Korea is not responsible. Look at what it does to its own population, and you say they're doing fine? I question what you define as fine. Commenter didn't leave their name. The United States was on the very razor's edge and probably on the wrong side of right in World War II when we used nukes. We had been in the war for so long that we had gone crazed. We had started attacking civilians for the purpose of killing civilians. Nuclear weapons, I don't know how many of y'all know this, but Nagasaki and Hiroshima were spared the firebombings by Curtis LeMay and his Air Force in World War II. They didn't bomb them. They left them untouched on purpose. There were 3 cities that they had left untouched, but they didn't drop the 3rd bomb. They didn't have to. Those cities were left untouched so that when they nuked them with one airplane, it would have a psychological effect on the Japanese. Now, this is, I said it's a double-edged sword or the razor's edge on this case. What they were doing when they bombed the Japanese cities, it was for a reason, and they went to firebombing. There was military foundation for this. Excuse me just a second here. There's 2 reasons for it. Primarily, Japanese industry was cottage. They would make, like when they built an airplane, certain parts would be made in this person's little backyard shop and certain parts would be made in that person's little backyard shop, and then they'd bring them all together to the factory and put the plane together. This is why Japanese aircraft and a lot of other things in the Japanese war industry had so many problems. There was poor quality control because of the manufacturing process. But what it did do is it meant that you could bomb the assembly building, but you couldn't bomb the factories without bombing the whole city. And then because of the high winds in Japan, you couldn't bomb from high altitude because it was too inaccurate. You couldn't, you'd bomb in a concentrated pattern, but by the time the bombs got to the ground, it would spread everywhere. And also because of the construction of Japanese buildings, paper and light wood and stuff, high explosives were not as deadly or as destructive as incendiary bombs. So they switched to low altitude incendiary bombing, military purposes, and they bombed the whole cities, military purposes, to get to the construction plants, the little backyard shops. Now that had a military purpose, but Curtis LeMay had a bloodlust, and he was by then in charge of strategic bombing, and he just wanted to kill the Japanese people at that point. He'd gone a little crazy in Europe. We started bombing the civilian population just to kill people. So when we bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in large part, that was to kill people. Now, it had a military purpose. Okay, there was a purpose for it. But, and in the long run, it saved lives. If we had invaded Japan, we'd have ended up killing far more civilians and we'd have had more casualties. It did save lives. But the moral arguments here, this is one of those areas where it gets cloudy. And normally, moral issues shouldn't be that gray. And the reason it gets cloudy is because of the perspective on which you're standing. If you're a secular humanist, there was every reason in the world to drop the nukes. If you have a Christian worldview, ooh, that got a little harder. So we have these problems. At least our country at that time wrestled with these deliberations. If you're a type of people that won't wrestle with them anymore, if you've got so depraved that you don't care about life at all anymore, you should not be in control of nukes. Well, this is Iran, because Iran doesn't care if they sacrifice their entire population. They, as far as they're concerned, they all go to heaven. You know, they're Muslim. And they don't care how many non-believers in Israel and America they kill. As far as they're concerned, that's doing Allah's work. So they don't care who they kill. But I got a little news flash for you folks, and I know this is going to probably shock you. I trust Russia with their nukes more than I trust the United States. Yes, you heard me right. Why? Because Russia is more rational than we are. Russia is not prepared to sacrifice their citizenry. Russia also plans to use their weapons in a military fashion like we did in World War II. They're not necessarily going to bomb cities just to bomb cities. New York City is also a hub of commerce. Certain cities that are huge, they are military targets nowadays. So yeah, they'll hit them. But they're not going to just bomb every city just for the sake of killing people. That's not how their war plans work. And they have defense systems to try and defend against incoming missiles, and they have a system in place. It's old, it's antiquated, it hasn't been kept up, but they built a system to house as many of their citizens as they possibly could from the big cities to protect them as well. In our country, we just gave our citizens up for the slaughter. We said, well, it's mutually assured destruction, and we're not going to do any of this because if there's a nuclear war, we all die. That's not true. We've done 2 shows on that now, and we've proved to you that's a lie. That's an American lie. So it's different perspectives. You know, the way you look at the American ideology of nuclear war and maybe the possible Iranian way of looking at it, but the same ballpark. In both cases, they're willing to give people up. They don't care. They'll sacrifice. And in the American case, you say, well, they'll die too. No, they won't. No, they won't. They, in this case, are going to move to their underground city or cities, and they think they'll be fine. They've made provisions for them to survive, not you and I. You and I were given up to the slaughter. So I don't know that Americans should have nuclear weapons. And I mean that because we've become a depraved nation. I trust Putin with his much more than I trust us because we're willing to sacrifice people. Russia has proven they're not in that way. So you be careful with this nuclear thing. We are not the angels that we set out to be. What Trump did was illegal. Constitution says you have to declare war. Well, War Powers Act is an unconstitutional law. So I don't give a rat's rip who's done it before. Wrong is wrong is wrong. Not all countries deserve to have nukes. It's not the case. Now, Iran specifically. They're Islamic. Worse, they're Shia. You don't understand the difference between Shia and Sunni, and most Americans don't. Most politicians don't. Most military men don't. They got no business whatsoever getting involved militarily in the Middle East until they have a better understanding of that division and what it means, why it's important. Shia Islam, what we're doing right now, plays right into their hands. It affirms their end times prophecies. They're looking for their 12th Imam to come back. They think he's, right at the door. All those men on horseback with the black flags that you saw a few years ago with ISIS and all that stuff and the Arab uprising, dude, that was a sign. That is that's the black flags of Khorasan. That's right out of their prophecy. It's false prophecy by my perspective, but not to them. And when we bomb them, we justify everything they believe. So if you're looking at this from a secular perspective, you think, well, we've decapitated Iran's ability to use nukes. That was never the problem. All you've done is affirm the mullahs in the eyes of faithful Muslims. And in this case, Shia, the more violent side, the harder edged side of Islam, the side where that's where most of your terrorists are coming from. Now, what happens if you don't totally destroy the mullahs? If you cannot eradicate all of Shia Islam's leadership, all of it, it will come back like a hydra. You got to get every head or they'll grow back. And if and when they do, they will say, see, the great Satan and the lesser Satan gave us everything they had, and we're still here because we're Allah's chosen and he protected us. They couldn't destroy us. And you have just made them more powerful than they were before. You struck them down, Darth. And all you did was make him more powerful than you could ever imagine. Because you do not understand that with which you deal. Ignorance, arrogance, hubris, narcissism. That's one of the deadly traits of this nation. We never bother to understand other people before we act. Comment on the board from Natasha. So we're bringing Yahweh's name to naught. If you think that way, yes, Natasha. If this nation isn't a covenant nation with Yahweh, yes, we're bringing his name to naught. There are other ways to contain a country like Islam. But you have to have a people like I was discussing earlier that know exactly what they're doing, are morally grounded, and are united. But we went to lunch with our middle son yesterday. And he brought up, he said, one of the things the internet is doing to us, the reason we don't have friend groups like we used to do, we're so factioned. We don't have 3 TV channels, and we're not watching just one of 3 shows every night, at different times every night. So we got this, that, and the other thing, and we're so scattered that nobody has a common core. There's no common ethic. There's no common social base. We don't have anything in common anymore. We're balkanized, even within our own communities, within our own families. And what did the scripture say? A house divided cannot stand. Well, if my son can see this, why can't the supposed intelligentsia ruling our country? Unless, of course, that's exactly the point, is to balkanize us. So if you had a united country that understood how to handle things, let me ask you this. Even for all his faults, let's say Trump were to have just told Tehran, he said, look, I don't care if you get nukes. I don't care. But you stop using military and proxy and terror and all this stuff. You stop attacking my people now. Period. If you don't, and you continue with this stuff, this terrorism and everything, and especially if you ever use one of your nukes, I will destroy your nation in a nuclear holocaust. End of story. The world be danged. If they've got a problem with it, we'll deal with them the same way. Now, if Trump had just stated that to the whole world, Trump, nobody would doubt. And I'll give you one even better. If Ronald Reagan had told them he would nuke them, they would have behaved because they would have believed him. Why can't you do that in this country? Because you have leftists, progressives. And I'm not talking about Democrats. So all you MAGA people, yeah, the Democrat. No. You got war pigs in the Republican Party too, Jack. This is the uniparty. And the reason that you cannot tell Congress before you do something is because Congress will tell the enemy. Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. So what's going to happen is you're going to elect one of those bozos, and then they're going to mollify and codify and whatever and treat poor Iran like, oh, that previous president was so mean. You go ahead and do whatever you want. You get Obama, a Shia Muslim. I don't care if he said he was Christian or not. He lied through his teeth. Taqiyya. It's a Shia Islam. And he imported Shia Islam into this nation. And so did Biden, because Obama was probably behind a lot of that. Biden wasn't. Did you see the latest report? In the last 6 months of his term, Biden was only in the White House less than 6 hours total in the office. He wasn't running the country. So you're going to let people who aren't elected, aren't accountable, nobody knows who they are, and nobody will go after them and put them in jail right now because, folks, that was all illegal. All of that is illegal. All of it. It's called fraud. You get big-time jail for that. Nobody's being punished. Trump is not slapping cuffs on anybody. Nobody. Oh, well, investigations take a long time, Joe, to get a good. Oh, bull crap. Bull. Tired of hearing the excuses. So what we're doing with Iran, not only being illegal according to our laws, it's immoral the way we're doing it. We don't have the moral high ground, and we're appealing to the God of war and money. Because he hasn't convinced me he appealed to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, Iran again. If you give them a nuke, they will use it. Will. They have said so. Honor the threat. So you've got a religious, fanatical country willing to die because they think that gets them into heaven automatically. And because they think that global chaos will bring back their Messiah. So they don't care. That's a win-win for them. Where what we're doing right now is a lose-lose for us. You think you've won, Big MAGA? You think you've won because you bombed some nuclear sites? How the heck do you know you even destroyed that site? Well, the government said so. Government says a lot of things that are flat-out lies. Trump wouldn't. Oh, yes, he would. He has. Everybody lies. It's human nature. So you don't know that you destroyed it. And even if you did, you don't know that the things you needed to get were still in the freaking facility. They might have got the uranium out of there. And if they did, that's all they really needed. Then you didn't do anything except put the world in more peril. You acted for political posturing in a way that was, you should have just let the Israelis do it. They knew what they were doing. Stay out of it. And yes, I'm a Christian. And yes, I know I'm supposed to support Israel, but I don't. That's not Israel over there. That's the nation of Israel. That's the freaking house of Judah. It's not Israel. Not according to scripture. Oh, yeah. If you're not watching on Wednesdays, don't even start with me. I got that one better than your pastor does. Well, my pastor's got a seminary degree. Yeah, exactly. And lawyers have a law degree and they don't know the Constitution because they never read the Constitution. You get a seminary degree without ever having to read the Bible. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I know. I've talked to some of them. Don't. So Iran get a nuke. They're going to use it. Now, luckily for us, they only have one. They're not using it on Israel and they're not going to use it on the United States. They're going to use it on Mecca. And that's because you're dealing with Islamic prophecy and the Sunni Shia rift. If you don't understand that, at least it's my opinion, they'd use it on Mecca, mostly because they've said they would. It's in their prophecy that Mecca will be destroyed. You have to honor the threat. Now, let me ask you something else. What happens if they didn't have nukes? But because you bombed their nuclear facilities, Russia and Pakistan, India, both decide to give them nukes. Maybe China. Now they've got nukes because you bombed them when they didn't have nukes. You brought about the very circumstances you claim that you were trying to avoid. Well, Joe, that's not going to happen. Well, Russia has already said that they're going to give them nukes, or that they're suggesting it. And India said that they were thinking about doing it now. And how do we know that that Chinese plane that flew into Iran last week didn't have nukes on board? Coming on the board from Deltros, Russia has stated that they are willing to give Iran a nuke, apparently. Yes, exactly. Now, let's say Russia gives Iran a nuclear weapon. And let's say it's a nuclear weapon that was made using U.S. materials, U.S. uranium. Thank you, Hillary Clinton. What? Oh, yeah. If you're not old enough to remember when Hillary sold 20% of our uranium to the Russians for a couple $100,000 to her campaign fund and sent a whole bunch of money to her Clinton, charity that never did any charity work. What happened? Well, Joe, it's just a nuke. Yeah. It's a nuke that when you detonate it, it's going to have a U.S. fingerprint because they're going to go test the uranium and they're going to go say, hey, that's the uranium that comes out of the United States. So that must have been a United States weapon, a U.S. weapon. And what if I detonate that weapon somewhere other than the United States and Israel, somewhere where it's going to do even more good for me? Let's say I detonate it to make it look like the Ukrainians used it in Moscow. I'm an Iranian with a Russian nuke made from the uranium that Hillary gave the Russians, and I set that weapon off in Moscow under the guise of Ukrainian operatives. Who do you think Russia's going to blame? Not Iran. They're going to blame the United States and NATO for arming the Ukrainians and giving them a nuke that tried to take out the Kremlin. Now, what do you think is going to happen? You might very well be in a full-scale nuclear exchange between Russia and the Great Satan, and Iran come out unscathed. Well, Joe, that's just a fairy tale scenario. You think so? You think so? If I was in the shoes of the mullah and you gave me a weapon such as that, that's exactly what I would do with it, and that's exactly why I would do it. And that is probably the likely result. Especially now. Russia would test it. with what's going on in the Ukraine? Jeez, that's an easy solution. So if they respond, they say, you nuked us, we're going to nuke you. One nuke. It's a measured response. And then they nuke Washington. Let's say Trump survives. You think he's not going to respond? He will. He has to save face. It's Trump. He's the perfect person for this in this time in history. He will respond. And then the Russians respond. And the next thing you know, everybody in the world's tossing nukes, except the Middle East. There's no reason for them to toss nukes. It'd be China, the United States, Europe, Russia. That part of the world would be left out. That, Africa, Southeast Pacific. That'd be where the cradle of humanity would have to go to survive. Iran wins. We don't war game enough in this country. We should. Or what if you give Iran a nuke and they decide to set it off in DC and they get Trump? And let's say the nuke uses Indian. It's an Indian nuke. But you have no proof of who did it. You know, the uranium can be traced to India, but you don't know who did it. Who set it off? Was it India? Was it Iran? You might suspect. Trump's dead now. Let's say he gets Vance too. So now you got Speaker Johnson. Let's say he lives. That man's a wuss. And he's under the control of the deep state. What are you going to do in retaliation? Who are you going to hit? This is what happens when you allow terrorism to be treated as a police matter. So who are you going to go arrest for nuking the capital of the United States? Well, Joe, that's an act of war. And bombing the nuclear facilities of Iran wasn't? Whoopsie. Well, maybe Iran should just treat that as an international war crime and just issue an arrest warrant for Trump. No, they got every right in the world to retaliate. It was an act of war. We're at war with Iran in the way that we used to think of things anyway. Form and function. I don't care about the slippery slope. I still deal in reality. Comment on the board from Mr. Quest. It says, if that were to happen, Iran would boast too proudly about it, I think. Not if the object was to cause the United States to eat itself, Mr. Quest. They are capable of working that way. They've proven it over and over again. So what if they did do that? Or better yet, what if you gave Iran a nuke and Iran gave it to one of their proxies? And the proxy set it off. Now you can't even tie it to Iran. And the proxy could boast about it. And even though you know that they're Iranian supported, you can't do anything about it. It's a stateless terrorist group. It'd be like if BLM set off the nuclear bomb. Where are you going to go? Who are you going to get? It's BLM. What do you do? We've created this mess. You have no one to retaliate against, especially without setting the world on fire. Or, other option, what if they actually have sleeper cells in this country and they turn them loose? You know who those, and I believe they do have sleeper cells in this country. Obama was bringing them in. The FBI was ignoring them. Biden continued bringing them in. He put Muslims in charge of, he put a Muslim in charge of the CIA. And then he put Muslim Brotherhood operatives in charge of our intelligence community. You had the enemy within the gates being set up by a Shia Muslim whose goal was to destroy the United States. Obama said so. Nobody wanted to honor the threat. 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America, on his way to making us, an Islamic state. They've said they're going to fly the flag of Islam over the Capitol building of the United States. We never honor the threat. Remember, Obama was the one who told the FBI they weren't allowed to monitor the mosques anymore because that was racist. Islam's not a race, it's a religion. And then they said, well, that's persecution of Muslims. You're just homophobic, Islamophobic scaredy cats, and you leave them poor Muslims alone. Even though we have centuries of history that they will use the mosques to do their work. And that's where your terrorists were meeting in safety. And the FBI was told they couldn't monitor them anymore. Okay, who brought the nuclear weapons into this country that got in? There was 8 of them at one point that they knew about. I've played you the video before of the customs agent in Southern California with the local news reporter saying, well, no, they didn't get through this facility. Well, what's the implication? The implication is it got through another facility. The reports have been out there. Up to 8 weapons got into this country. Now, if they are still operative, I don't know. I don't know if the people who brought them in have the skills to keep them functioning, because these things need constant maintenance. But what if they actually are in this country and you have sleeper cells with nuclear weapons? And even if that nuke doesn't detonate and go nuclear, you still have a dirty weapon explosion on your hands. So even if it ends up being just like a couple sticks of TNT on top of a ball of uranium, now I've got a dirty spot in the center of a city that you're never going to live in again. Not in our lifetime. You can't defend against these sleeper cells. We treat them as police matters. That's not going to. And then once we get them in there, the judges will just turn around and let them out, and they'll flee the country because the judges are on their side. Whether they are intentionally or not, they are. We're caught up in a form of hysteria right now, folks. We've all gone mad as a community, as a country. The world is depraved. It's lost its freaking mind. So even if you try to defend against radical Islam and Islamic sleeper cells, they would just pull out the PC woke, racism, Islamophobic hammer that they've so perfectly perfected. And then the Karens would go nuts on you, male and female Karens, because, feminist men are nothing but demasculated eunuchs. And then your hands are tied. Terrorism runs the country. Well, Joe, that would never happen. Really? Who did anything to the Weather Underground? They arrested a few people, put them in jail, but they didn't bother shutting down the organization. The one that bombed the Capitol building, bombed the police stations in New York. Weather Underground, led by a guy named Bill Ayers, William Ayers, same William Ayers that set Obama up, same William Ayers that just a few years ago said that he doesn't resent anything he did, doesn't regret it, doesn't repent of it, wishes he'd have done more. His goal was to destroy the United States. He put a man in there who's been doing just that ever since he showed up, Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro. So let me ask you, is Occupy Wall Street not a terrorist group? Yep. Did anybody do anything to them? No. BLM? Yep. Did anybody do anything to them? No. Antifa? Terrorist group? Yep. Anybody do anything to them? No. The anti-ICE riots? Is that terrorism? Yep. Anybody doing anything to them? Nope. I rest my case. We're not going to do anything. Can't. This is the mess we've made for ourselves. All of us. You, me, the people doing it, all of us. This is the mess we've made. 2 ways out as I see it. I'm looking at history. 2 ways out. There's no innocence in this. The only innocents here are those who are very, very young, probably preschool age, or those who were aborted before they were born. They're innocent. Otherwise, there are no innocents in this. 2 ways out. We have a global war, the likes of which mankind has never seen. And whatever's left picks up the pieces and starts all over again. Or the Messiah returns. I don't see any other way out of this. Well, there is a third option. Global tyranny, the likes of which man has never seen. That could happen as well. Either way, what we did in Iran, I don't disagree with the fact that we had to do something about Iran. But Iran was also another problem of our making because of the way we dealt with the Shah. Vietnam was a problem of our making because of the way we dealt with Ho Chi Minh, this country. The problem of communist China is our making because of the way we dealt with Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek, this country. after World War II. Our nation has caused immeasurable harm because we don't keep the promises we make to people, because we're just using them. We just want what we want. We'll make promises to get them to do what we want them to do, and then once it's done, we just leave them be. It's the same thing with the Democratic Party getting in bed with Islam, saying we'll use them for their money and their political power, but when we're done with them, we'll just discard them. They're just a bunch of backwards camel jockeys. We're not worried about them. Oh, I got a little news flash for you there, secular humanists. Democratic Party, secular humanists, aka communists, socialists, whatever name you want to call them. Islam will win that fight. Always has, always will. There's a reckoning, or needs to be a reckoning. And our nation's not going to want to face it. We just want to keep hiring ourselves a new Messiah. Trump with a super cape, Superman. He'll save us. Cheeto Jesus. Praying to God. See, he's a religious man. No, he isn't. Which God was he praying to? Sounds good. But then you got Glenn Beck telling all the Christians out there that he's a Christian, and most of them are believing him. False prophet, Pied Piper, and you're following him down the road. Beck is a servant of a demonic being. He's a Mormon. He's an apostate. And he'll get mad at me for saying that. He spent 20-something minutes one time in a monologue telling me how I'm the hater for saying he's not Christian. I just opened the Bible and read the Bible. The Bible says he's not a Christian. He's not a disciple of the Messiah anyway. Charlie, would you deny that? Am I right about that?
Yeah, we're in trouble.
So I'm about wrapped up. I told you we only had about an hour today.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, we're in.
But this is another one of these shows that you love, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love this show.
Wasn't Scary Show. It's just a wake up and smell the roses show.
No, it's horrific.
Yeah,
because
Ms. Stratton's
if they
talking
do
about
any
Farrakhan's. Oh yeah, but Miss Stratton's talking about Nation of Islam, Farrakhan's Nation of Islam, a dangerous sleeper. She's right there too. Those people are scary dangerous. Our prisons. That's the number one place to recruit Muslim radicals in this country.
Yeah, big time.
Folks, we've done everything for the sake of expediency. We want the mostest for the cheapest, for the easiest, without bleeding. That's why Doge comes along and says, look at all this money you're wasting. And what do the Republicans do? They put it right back in the continuing resolution.
Right.
They gave him the money back.
Gosh.
How are you going to, and then, all of a sudden Elon becomes a criminal just because, he's a bad guy now because he's saying 37 trillion in debt. You got to do something. Folks, you need to understand something. When a country goes bankrupt, it doesn't mean that the physical borders disappear and the governments collapse and you have to remake a whole new country of Timbuktu of North America. But you do end up with a new government. They redo everything. And you never, ever come out the other side with the same nation. Ever. That's the whole point of Cloward and Piven, is to bankrupt us, because they know it gives them the ability to remake the country. You think we're going to have another Charlie, when they do this and we go bankrupt, you think we're going to have another constitutional convention with statesmen like we did in the 1700s?
We're going to have a king.
Yeah, Hamilton will get his way.
Yeah.
And his king will be the chairman of the Politburo of America. Or he'll be a caliph.
Yeah. Mm. And sorry, MAGA people, but everything that Trump has done, he made all this big fanfare when he first took office, and he filed the most executive orders of any president in history in the first few days. How many of those executive orders have been codified into law? And what's stopping the next president from undoing everything that Trump has done?
Nothing.
Nothing.
So
So
this
what
is
has
all
Trump
kabuki theater.
really accomplished?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Whoa.
I'm
He
sorry.
made you
I'm
think
sorry.
he's a king. He made
Well,
not king. He made you think he's a savior.
Yeah, yes. He makes you think that, but
Now,
when it comes down to brass tacks, he's really done nothing.
in the event that
Is
somebody
this by
stumbles,
design? That's
yes,
my
I'm
question.
beginning. I told you before the election, it was one or the other. He's what he appeared to be, or he was one of the best pieces of deception. And remember, there's a meme out there where he supposedly told Oprah, "If I ever run, I'll run as a Republican because they're easier to fool." Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
They are more intelligent than the average leftist. They actually are. The more critical thinking.
Yes.
But what it's proving is they can still be fooled.
Yes.
So now, if I was going to say, if anybody ever runs into this show doesn't know me, hasn't been aware of me, and they get to this point in the show, they're going to be like, well, look, all of that was garbage. You got no proof of any of this. You're right. I have no proof of it, but I have a track record. I wrote about this in 2012.
Well,
and I was worried about Trump in 2012, and everything I told people that it was going to happen because of him in the general terms, like with him getting caught up in COVID and everything I was worried about came true. And I was even talking about how the left would turn on the left and start assassinating its own. Jimmy Zinker, he's a show member here. He brought that up and said, just like I told you it would. All of the stuff I've told you, none of it makes me a prophet. I just know history. That's all. Ms. Stratton says it's not Trump's fault his EOs have not been codified. That's a rhino problem in Congress. No, she's right about that. But quit calling them rhinos.
But they're not rhinos.
They are Republicans.
It's two wings of the same bird.
Yes.
Tell me, Barbara,
thinking that the Republican Party represents you, Ms. Stratton.
When the Republicans have had the White House and both houses of Congress, what have they done with it?
Outspent
have they
the lefties.
Taken back any ground at all?
Never.
No. They're the same thing. Maybe a little slower in some aspects, but then again, I'm wondering if that's even true today.
Yeah. Well, look,
because the way we're running down this, it's bad.
Like my drill instructor would have said 0, which you're supposed to stop and say snap, sir. And I'll say eyeballs. Snap, sir. I want you to look at me and listen to me. There are people in the Democratic Party who, if you got them away from the TV and the programming, could still be saved. Now, there's not as many in the Democratic Party anymore.
Yeah.
But 20 years ago, there were a lot of them in there that were decent people.
Yeah.
But the Democratic Party is hemorrhaging people right now. The people who were still decent are leaving the Democratic Party. The Republican, and that's because they're not Democrats. They don't align with what the Democratic Party is doing. If you are a conservative and you're part of the Republican Party, do not think for a second that the Republican Party, the people who you call rhinos, that's the party.
That is the party.
You haven't woke up to the fact yet that you need to leave the Republican Party. Democrats have finally woke to that fact, and they're doing it. Too late. There's not many of them left that are decent. There are still more decent people left in the Republican Party, but that's because the Republican Party has always lagged the Democrats. The Democrats are leading. They're almost full-blown Marxists now, and the Republican Party is now to the left of JFK. So you're now a Clinton lefty. Literally. There's a lot more similarity between Donald Trump and Clinton than there is between Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan. And Donald Trump ain't got nothing in common with Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't know the history, don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, man, because I do. I've read our history. So what you need to do is get the freak out of the Republican Party. And the Democrats that are still decent need to get out of there. And we need to find some way to put decent people back into office. And that's not going to happen under this two-party system, which is exactly why the two-party system was formed. Because they can control you.
exactly like Carol Quigley said. Oh my gosh, we had somebody who told us what they were doing. We can look and see that they've done it, and we still don't want to believe Carol. Remember what my ancestor said. It's easier to get people to believe the lie than to believe that they've been lied to and accepted it. You can't get them, once they've accepted the lie, you can't get them to recognize the lie.
Yeah.
That's all I had for today. Miss Stratton, that's a progressive talking point. Had we all, Rush Limbaugh told us that the majority of this country, left and right, is conservative in the way they live their life. Rush Limbaugh told us, don't ever let anybody tell you you cannot do something. Rush Limbaugh told us that when the conservative principles are espoused correctly, it wins every time. Rush Limbaugh told us that the two-party option is the only way to go. He lied. And that is why he was so against Ross Perot and anybody else that ever mentioned a third party, because a third party would actually represent a true two-party option in this country. And he knew that if the conservative-minded people from the left and the conservative-minded people from the right had all left and followed Ross Perot, that his precious Republicans would never again hold power. And neither would the Democrats. And that's why he went off on that lady who called in and called him on that in 1994. He berated a senior citizen, insulted her for 7 minutes, and then never, ever mentioned that phone call again because he got caught. And then I watched from that moment forward, and I realized that that old lady was right. They're keeping us on the reservation. Yeah, we the freaking people. Yes,
Yep.
Mr. Quest. Yes.
No party affiliated.
You're free to disagree with me. I don't mind. Please just make sure you do so with all the variables in play on your equations. The problem is it takes a lot of work to dig up the variables that they've hidden from us.
Well, and if you look at history and you real history, what really happened, not what you're taught in your indoctrination centers, but if you look at that, you know, a lot of things like this line up, and you know, they say you're doomed to repeat history. You're doomed to repeat history if you don't learn real
From history.
history.
Yeah. And that's where the work comes from, Charlie, because if I want to read about what's going on in a certain period of time, I got to go find the archives of the newspapers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the, you know, if it's happened in the time when they had reel clip, you know, television reels. This is also why the powers that be, you know, the spirit of the age needs to silence older people. Say,
Mhm.
well, everybody
Right.
says it was better in the old days. Well, you know, when I was a kid, that probably was true. If I'd have said, you know, the old days were better, that probably was true. But I'm going to tell you right now, when I was a child, it was a lot better than it is today. That I know is a fact.
Mm.
As a fact.
Yeah.
And they can't afford to have the elderly be listened to. They need to silence us because we know that they are gaslighting you. How do we know? Because we were there. So
Yeah.
they'll say our memories are faulty. No, they're not.
Mm-mm.
No, they're not. All
Yeah.
right.
I seem to remember a king somewhere that took the advice of young people over old people. Didn't work out too good for him. But anyway, that's another story for
you
another
saying-
day, like
Are you
Wednesday.
saying
maybe.
he's separated from the southern part of his nation?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the world's been paying the price ever since?
Yeah.
Yeah, Miss Stratton, two-party. Yeah. What did Washington tell us when he left office? Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Because he knew human nature.
Yep.
And party systems could easily be abolished in this country. It doesn't take a whole. We
Oh,
might do that next
wouldn't-
Monday.
Yeah.
It's
it wouldn't
really
take that
easy to do. Matter of fact, Charlie, that's what we're going to do.
A few
Well-
simple changes to the Constitution next Monday
And-
that'll alleviate all these problems.
And, you know, it does my heart good, at least in my county. I don't have statistics for all over the place. But in my county here in Florida, there are more NPA people than there are those in the party system. That's a good thing. Now, it probably doesn't translate into, you know, the greater state. Or
Yeah, because they
even
still have to
the
vote D
United
or R.
States. But
So it doesn't do any good.
and it's and we're penalized in our state for being NPA because
'cause we can't
ours
vote
is a
in
closed
primaries.
primary state, and so we're penalized for it. But whenever I look at the rolls and stuff and I see those numbers, I'm like, at least there are some people out there that get this.
But you know what? That if we wanted to try, that could be used against the system. Because if I ran as the NPR candidate, I would automatically be on the rolls. Because I'd be the only one filed as NPR.
That's correct. Yeah.
Or NPA, rather.
NPA, right.
Yeah. And the rules,
not
the laws say
National
they
Public
have to
Radio.
put me on the ballot. So I don't even have to go through, I wouldn't even have to go through a primary. The laws of our state
That's
would
true.
force them to put me on the ballot.
That is true. That is true. In fact,
Can
I
be used
always,
against. We're just
Yeah,
not
well,
doing
not always, but the vast majority of the time, if there's an NPA candidate on there, I will vote for them.
it. Okay.
Not that it does any good because most people don't. But anyway,
That's all I had for today. That's it.
All
You
right.
got anything else?
No, this is enough for today.
All right.
Since
On
you've
the
been
way out,
donated.
we're all going to sing the song. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy. Ren and Stimpy for the rest of the day.
Hello, Wade.
We thank you for joining us. We love each and every one of you. We appreciate you for being here. If nothing else, even if you disagree with me, hopefully it gave you something to think about. New perspectives, other things for you to put in your own mental calculus as you go about your day trying to figure out what's going on. In the end, I don't want you to live in fear of any of this. I don't want you to get angry about all of it. It's just there's much more. There is always much more going on than the world wants to talk to you about because they want you to see it their way. I don't care if you agree with me or not. I just want you to think for yourself. I'm bringing up other things for you to think about. I gave you my opinion. It's an opinion show. This wasn't a history lesson. This wasn't a logic lesson class today. It wasn't a classroom day today. It was an editorial day. So you're free to ignore me all you want. I don't mind. I'm kind of used to that. So, but maybe some of what I said will resonate with you. If you like what we do on the Road to Concord, please spread the word. Let everybody know. This is a show that is hopefully going to be used to support all of our efforts. So if you are of a mind and can't afford to do so, in a time when I know money is very tight, we would appreciate it if you would considering donating to the show if you do not already do so. Like we tell everybody, all we ask you for is a $5 cup of coffee every month. Go to the donate page, set up the donate every month, $5. Some people do $5.65 so that we don't have to pay the fees, the processing fees and everything. And that's right. You go to our campaign and you give us $5, they take 65 cents of it. Welcome to the wonderful world of banking. This happens. This is why your merchants, when they charge you extra to use your credit card, that's because they're already running on such fine margins. They can't afford that 4%. That might actually be their profit margin. In some cases it is, but then again, you know, this country's ignorant about how business works because capitalism just magically makes money when you have a business. You know, that's what we've been taught. We think that way. God, one day we have to talk about that too. So much to talk about, but not today. We're going to get out of here. We love you. We thank you for being here. Spread the word, share the show. Y'all take care. Stay safe. If you're of a mind to do so, we will be here Wednesday with We Who Are Lost, our sister channel. If you have not already done so, please, We Who Are Lost on Rumble, or you can find the We Who Are Lost on Facebook and YouTube. We will see you then. Bye-bye.